Earlier this week, I was sitting with a few friends, reminiscing about a person that I went to high school with. And at some point, I did what any normal person would do in that scenario. I went to Facebook and aggressively stalked them for an hour. And that by itself was a benign exercise. But then, as I got deeper into our Facebook timeline exchange, 2011, 2008, 2007, I suddenly got that unique, sickening feeling of encountering myself as a teenager, reading the things that for some reason I thought it was acceptable to post publicly. And if I can offer you one piece of rabbinic advice tonight, it's to go home and look at whatever you posted online before you turned 22 and delete it. Honestly, even 30, let's be real. I think that presumably some of you have done this already. Part of what makes it so cringy to see an archive of your former self is that frequently what you see is just not you anymore. The things you believed, the things that you wore, the things that you wanted, it's not always fun to remember. But then again, it is a good thing to recognize who you were in relation to who you are today. I often feel like there should be a bracha, a blessing for recognizing the growth that you see in yourself. Because there's something about that experience of seeing growth that is just so powerful, even if it's also quite awkward. Shiru ladonai shir chadash, we say in our Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat. Sing unto God a new song. God gets tired of the old material and wants us to sing something new every so often. And sometimes when we look back at what we once held dear on Twitter or in real life, we recognized all that has changed within us and realize that we are in fact capable of doing this. We are capable of doing and believing new things. Part of what we're doing here tonight is seeing if there's some bit of newness that we can achieve in our own lives, to see if we can leave some room for the possibility of more than this world or more than the past work week. That same Psalm 96 that asks us to sing a new song primarily focuses on a future that's better than anything we can imagine in our present time, a mythic era of redemption. Kiva lishpot haaretz yishpot tevel v'tzedek ve'amim be'emunato. For God is coming to rule the earth, judging the world justly and all peoples in faithfulness. Everyone wants a future of justice and fairness between peoples. But if we're going to get there, this psalm asserts, we better sing a new song, which is actually quite hard to do. We're so used to the old tunes that we bristle at singing new ones. We often forget that at some point the familiar songs were once new to us as well. Only when we hear what we used to sing do we recognize that we are capable of letting go and changing if we want to, even though it's hard. And letting go is at the core of this week's Torah portion. We enter Parashat Ve'era detailing the Passover story in media res. Moses has already encountered God at the burning bush, and here God continues a conversation with Moses about convincing Pharaoh to let the people go. We read of the exchange between Moses and Pharaoh and the first 7 of the 10 plagues that ensue. You actually already know how this back and forth goes. Moses goes to Pharaoh and says, Shalach et ami, let my people go, and famously, Pharaoh doesn't go for it. The verb shalach, meaning to send or to let go, is the operative motif in this parsha. It appears 26 times, drawing us to think over and over again about the need to course correct, to let go of, or at least reevaluate, our most deeply held assumptions. But for now, Pharaoh doesn't budge. The Hebrew goes back and forth with different ways of expressing this, kashay lev, that his heart was steeled, or chazek lev, that his heart was hardened, or kaved lev, that his heart was heavy. The text expresses it in different ways to paint a raw, emotional portrait of Pharaoh, beckoning the reader to relate a little bit to his emotional resistance. And if at first Pharaoh hardens his own heart, soon enough, as we know, God hardens Pharaoh's heart, orchestrating the whole thing to build some suspense, making it harder for Pharaoh to change his mind. In the narrative of the Hebrew Bible, this is par for the course. God has a flair for vengeance and high drama. But commentaries abound about why God would do this, prolonging Israelite bondage in Egypt by making Pharaoh more resistant than he otherwise would be to change. The classic rabbinic answer is that God wanted to make an example out of Pharaoh so that all Egyptians and Israelites would learn never to forsake God or God's people. Pharaoh winds up an example of what not to do. The 16th century sage Ovadia Sforno offers another take. By hardening Pharaoh's heart and drawing out his indecision about letting the people go, God gives the Egyptian people a chance to change their own minds. It's not enough for their leader to change his mind, Sforno teaches. The people needed a chance to understand their collective sin in enslaving the Israelites, and a collective process of tshuva was required. Therefore, there needed to be some drawn-out period of holding out and enduring the plague so that everyone, not only Pharaoh, could undergo collective transformation. Personally or collectively, the text hinges on the heartache that sometimes accompanies tshuva and change, and still, it exemplifies the value of changing one's mind. We know how the Exodus story unfolds. We know that Pharaoh eventually relents. He lets go and he lets the people go. And if the story ended there, maybe Pharaoh would have come out kind of a mixed hero. But eventually Pharaoh decides that he was wrong to change his mind. And in a couple parshas, he'll wind up dead in the Red Sea because of it. Or, following the Midrashic reading, Pharaoh doesn't actually die, but instead he survives and moves to Assyria, where he encourages the local population to repent. Do with that what you will. Take your pick on which you prefer. But either way, throughout the Pharaoh journey, and even unto the end, the upshot is the same, that it can be virtuous, and mostly is virtuous, to change your mind. In some ways, it's countercultural to say that it's sacred or good or positive in some way to change your mind. We punish politicians when they do it. We frequently hurt when loved ones do it. But if even God can change God's mind, as God does every so often in the Torah, who are we to hold so firmly to our own imperfect opinions, be they political or personal, private or public? Now, I must admit, Jews are not really known for backing down from strong opinions. I often feel like I need to lie down after simply a day's worth of hearing so many opinions in this building. I love you all, but still, fine. Having strong opinions, even though it's our want to have them, having strong opinions doesn't mean keeping them forever. In the Mishnah, in Tractate Eduyot, the rabbis ask, why are so many different opinions recorded in the Talmud? Why should both Hillel and Shammai's opinions be recorded in vain if only one of them is technically correct? The answer, says the Mishnah, is so that future generations will learn that a person should not hold fast to his opinion, since our ancient sages did not do so. That there should always be some room for doubt and course correction, because a functioning society depends on occasionally changing your mind. If holding opinions is a Jewish cliche, an openness to changing them is a Jewish value. Now, should you ever find yourself confronting what you once believed, looking online at social media posts, perhaps, or maybe in some piece of writing from the past, you might cringe. You might hate every minute of it, but you will know then that you've already managed to change big things about who you are. You might then decide to delete everything, which would be understandable, or you could retain it in a kind of virtual Talmud of the self, a testament to your own humility and capability for change. Even the smartest among us remain open, or rather must remain open, to having our hearts moved every so often. If, as we read, wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, at the very least we can decide not to be like Pharaoh, to allow ourselves the chance to let go, to make room for a new song and for a new version of ourselves. Shabbat Shalom.